Well, the situation in Syria is an international war fought by different actors on the same ground who are fighting in a big competition on the Syrian ground. The Syrian war started as a proxy war in which there were different powers, which are enemies, who started to support their own militias on the ground and their own faction in the Syrian conflict. A conflict that spread out as a civil war at the beginning, but right after the first days and the very first weeks, it became an international conflict. So we're saying, for instance, Iran and Russia supporting the government of Bashar al-Assad, while other states, like Western states, such as well the US and France, supporting other rebel groups, and other states, like from the Gulf, Turkey, supporting other rebel groups. Some of these rebel groups then became real jihadist groups, like terroristic groups, such as the ISIS is the sadly best known of these. But so now the situation has developed in this way. As I told you, the connections between these groups have been found out, between these groups and their international sponsors. So it's not a proxy war anymore. It has been fought as a proxy war now, but now it's becoming an international war in which the actors are direct involved. France, Britain and the US bombed Syria now directly, as we all know, and this shows as well that they are becoming actors directly involved in the area. I've been covering the Syrian conflicts from different front lines in all the countries and also following different kind of militias, and for instance it's very obvious that the Turkish government is supporting the so-called Free Syrian Army that is taking the control of Afrin region of northern Syria to have a territory in order to fight against the PKK and its allies on the Syrian ground. And I believe the conflict will be the conflict will end as a civil war now and will definitely develop into an international war as it already is. You have to know that people don't really care generally about Western democracy, because there is a great they don't really trust the Western institutions. The opinions in Syria are very different, like it's been, as I told you, under different areas. So people under the control of the troops of Bashar al-Assad generally stand with him, while other people, for instance, in the north of Syria, mainly support the Turkish institutions as well. I can say that most Syrians now would stand with their president, Bashar al-Assad. Why? The situation is very simple, because they saw who the other rebels are. They saw that from this revolution, how it was called at the beginning, there were many terroristic groups taking place, and they started to persecute Christians, persecute minorities. And I'm not speaking just about Daesh, about ISIS, but I'm speaking about other groups. So many people think, well, at least Assad's government, I mean, it's not a democracy, of course, but it was defending, and he is defending all the minorities, the Christians, and so on. So we now experience how is life under the rebels, and we prefer Bashar al-Assad. So that's a main point that has to be taken into consideration. But believe me, also the last bombings of the Americans and of the British and of the French in Syria created a big lack of trust towards the Western institutions, and almost no one has as a goal the importation of the Western model of democracy. Well, actually, in the last years and months, I've been covering, as a journalist, different refugee camps in Lebanon, Syrian and Palestinian refugee camps, in Syria, Syrian and Palestinian refugee camps, in Europe, in Italy, in Germany, and now in Turkey, so I can have a good overview. And I have to say that the camps that I found organized in the best way are the one in Turkey. Why? Because they have really a goal. They are welcoming people coming from Syria, and they're using Islam, so religion, as a common base to integrate them inside the society. And the Turkish government wants these Syrian people to become new Turks. So they want to integrate themselves and to be loyal to Turkey. So this is a goal. What will Turkey do with them? We will see, but at least they can have also a political goal with these people, because they can be used in order, I don't know, to change the demographic balance of the region and so on, so having more Sunni people in the region. But the fact is that in a very practical way, these people are trying to be integrated. I was speaking with children there, Syrian children, and I was speaking to them in Arabic, and they were answering me in Turkish, because they know Turkish now better than Arabic, because from the first class they start to do everything in Turkish. So this is a very important point that has to be underlined in order to understand how the demographical balance of the region will change, and how Islam is having a political and social function inside this crisis situation. I believe the Syrian crisis cannot be understood as a national crisis, but as a crisis of all the region that is having influences in Lebanon, in Jordan, in Turkey, and arriving till Europe with migration. I believe the main actors being on the ground will try to keep on their positions, you know, because they don't want to lose any positions. The main focus now should be on the Sochi dialogues, which are taking place in Sochi, Russia, where Iran, Turkey and Russia are meeting in order to plan the future of Syria in cooperation with the Syrian institutions, so with the institution linked to Bashar al-Assad. The main point is to see that Turkey now is linked to this kind of negotiation, so the negotiation held by Russia. So this is a very important meaning on an international level. Turkey, member of the NATO, is now dealing with Russia, which is on the field, on the Syrian field, an enemy, or at least a competitor of the US. So this will bring big problems as well for to the US administration, which seems to be divided now. On the one side, you have Trump, who said, or the people linked close to Trump, who said that they want to go away from the Middle East. But on the other side, you see some very important people in the US, like Mathis, like Bolton, willing to keep their position in Syria. And this is why they are also helping the Kurds so much, because the Kurds, the YPG became their actors on Syrian ground. And we have to remember that 2,000 US soldiers are arming and helping the Kurdish militias in Syria. So there might be also an internal conflict inside the American states to find out, and that will decide how much the US will be involved in this conflict, which will keep on to be fought. Well, the PKK is a Kurdish movement. The Kurds are a population that never got their own state. They are a population living in different areas, which are now divided into Turkey, Syria, Iran and Iraq. And they have been fighting and wishing for years to have their own nation. The fact is that the areas which they want to become their nation are not just populated by them, but they are populated by many other ethnic and religious groups, and in many parts of them the Kurds are just a minority. So they have to coexist with Turkish people, with Arabic people, with many Christian people in Syria, and with many Muslim, Shia, like Shiite and Sunni as well in Iraq, in Syria, and so on. And so their goal would be the one to create a state based on ethnicity. So ethnic Kurds that have their own state, which is pretty difficult to be realized in the Middle East, because, you know, the Middle East is formed by different ethnicities, different communities, different sects that coexist on the same ground. So the main goal of the governments in this region has always to be the one of creating a coexistence between them. While the Kurds in this way, they try to have their own nation based on ethnicity, and this brought to the clash with other states not willing them to have this independence based on ethnicity. First of all, the Turks. Turkey doesn't want to give them their space. They don't want to give up their land. So the Kurdish people started to develop their own independent movements, and the one that became the most important among them in the years was the PKK, which is a communist organization that is considered to be a terrorist movement by the US, was considered to be a terrorist movement by the US before this crisis and by the European Union, and they are trying to separate from Turkey and to get some lands from Syria, Iraq and Iran in order to keep all together. And this seems not being working. Why? Because actually by trying to doing this, they created enemies with all these states. Like they tried to create an independent region in Syria, and actually they managed it for a while. But this brought to the fear of Turkey, because they think, oh well, they made an independent region in Syria, they might be doing the same thing in Turkey. So this brought to such a situation that Turkey decided to enter Syria with its army to defeat the YPG, which is a local branch of the PKK. And it's difficult now to think that they will have their own independent nation, even if they're still supported by the US, because the US have to have someone on the ground representing their interests, and so this is happening now in Syria.